Welcome to the Prolific Pulse podcast. This is your host, Lisa Tomey Sonnenfeld. Today, our guest will be Chuck Rosenthal from California. He attended several colleges, and his last degree was a Ph.D. in English and American literature with emphasis in creative writing and narrative theory from the University of Utah. He is the author of 14 novels. And currently, he lives in Topanga Canyon with his partner, the poet Gail Wronsky, their daughter Marlena Dolly, and moved to Sydney, Australia in August of 2010 to pursue a career in performance art. You can read more about Chuck Rosenthal in the show notes. Thank you. It's so great to see you today, all the way from California. You got your morning coffee, and I've got my afternoon soda. So, yeah, here's to you.
There.
Yeah, I've already had my 3 cups today. So if I have any more, I mean, the podcast may just run itself.
Yes. Well, I drink less coffee now than I did. I have about, I don't know, 2 half cups, maybe a third, and
Yeah, I have usually my 2 major cups, and then I have the other cup that sits on my desk while I'm working and may or may not make it through it. So that's my little sidekick cup. So
right. That used to be how I would write first thing in the morning with coffee, and
exactly.
get up and have it and work when you're closest to your unconscious in the morning when you wake up, and
Yes.
that's where you want it to come from. So.
Yeah. My unconscious wakes me up sometimes about 4 a.m. and says, you need to write about this. Do you have that happen to you?
That, well, I do wake up sometimes in the middle of the night. In fact, that's in some ways where this sojourn for this book started. I arrived to teach a class at the Imperial College in London,
Oh,
and
wow.
for 4 months, and I taught Virginia Woolf, and then I taught Alice in Wonderland and Peter Pan, and that was fun. But was coming off radiation treatment, um, and then went to London the day that ended, and I got there. I was pretty nervous about my life, so I was waking up.
Sure.
Yeah, yeah, I was waking up at about 4 a.m. sometimes, and I'd get myself a glass of port and a sleeping pill of sorts, and I would go to the front window of the flat we were staying in, and it had a huge front window, and it just overlooked the street in South Kensington, and watch the buses go by and read William Blake, who I'd never read before, and wow, I you, you can you can get pretty old and still have many discoveries to make.
This is
So
so true.
yeah, and I think I was a mere 60 then. I don't I
Just a
just
baby.
Cohen would say, a young kid with a lot of crazy ideas. And and I was inspired to read more romantics. And when I got back into the States, my life partner, the poet Gail Wronsky,
Mhm.
said, "Oh, you want to read the romantics?" And she went up to her office and came down and threw 2 huge volumes of poetry, Keats, Shelley, and Byron.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, and I'm a pretty educated person, but that was just a place I hadn't been in my life, was reading these people. And then I read the biographies, and of course Mary Shelley and I read her biography, and really got ignited by these people and decide, well, how could I write about them? Seeing as people have been writing about them for 200 years, right, in terms of criticism and things like that. And but I'm not a critic, even though I've wrote some papers, I suppose, in graduate school, but they weren't very good. But I'm a novelist, so I'm not a biographer. I'm not an historian. I'm not even a poet. Uh, I think I have one or two poems accidentally in print. So, but I really had to think about how to enter their lives, and that's when Beatrice, the main character of Awake Forever and a Sweet Unrest, came to mind. And when I got her on the page, um, she was about 27 years old, and I realized, no, that's not. This is not going to work. That's too knowledgeable, too old, and so I made her 19, and a high school dropout, um, which my daughter, in fact, was a high school dropout, but she went on to become a very successful performance artist in Australia, which she's doing to this day, sadly, for those of us here at home, because that's far away. That's
Yes,
far
it
away.
is.
But you know, it's understandable. It was a great leap for her, and living with two very domineering artists. Um, and she, I don't know, she's tried to be a rock star in Los Angeles, and she went performed. Tough place to make it in Los Angeles, particularly in the music industry, particularly for a young woman. Um, anyway, so that and she's a great character. She becomes a great character, and she's has to discover herself as she goes in that basement. And right, I don't know how if I'm explaining enough, but she takes a job as an intern at a place called Beyond Baroque, where I just read on Friday for the launch of this press, um, Walton Will, and which has just been a wonderful organization for me, and they love my book, and that's a really good thing, uh, to have your publisher love your book, and um, she kind of is for some. You don't have to know the romantics, and I found out as this has gone on, um, that many people I know who are poets or even educated people don't know much about the romantics at all, and but you don't have to read this book. These are young in the setting in the early 19th century. These are young, wild people. They lived hard. They wrote hard. They wrote all the time, and they wrote, imaginatively and passionately. And they're all very different. And Mary Shelley is a very interesting person as well. Aside from creating the horror genre as a 19-year-old. Wow, that's a hell of a book. And so I ignited about them, and I wrote the book with these biographies open at my feet, as well as the poems of where she.
What a discovery. How long did it take you to write this?
I would say it took me 5 years of research, if you include the research. Um, the book itself, I think, took over 2 years, and it's a very short book. And oddly, it's the shortest piece of fiction, aside from some short fiction. It's the shortest novel I've ever written, and it took me the longest to write it. It really took me time to think about the circumstances I should concentrate on to tell a story, right? Because I'm not a biographer. I didn't want to do it, but the biographers did it. You can find out what people ate in the morning, and what they, there's so much information, it's almost more than you need. And I haven't really read many biographies. I was a Kerouac fan, so I knew Kerouac's biography pretty well. But another romantic, by the way, right? Jack
Yeah.
Kerouac, and those beats. And I even taught a course in Kerouac and the Beats for a while, and that was a lot of fun. The kids loved it, but I don't know. Schools are more conservative, really. They still in the 21st century. Jack Kerouac was a little bit out there. Anyways, these characters were a little bit out there. I mean, Byron got thrown out of the country. Not literally, he left, but he wasn't wanted. Uh, oh, and and that was amazing. He's
Yes.
funny and smart, and things like Child Harold and Don Juan in particular were just spectacular to read. But and Shelley and Keats are really, magnificent individuals. They had tremendous aspirations. Shelley to change the world, um, and well, failed kind of. But we all do.
We all fail. Yes.
Yeah, you get older and you realize just go vote. You're not going to change the world.
Now, I did
Yeah,
notice that the title of the book threw me for a moment until I figured out why. Well, the title, Awake Forever,
right.
threw me. So, like, okay, there's a reason behind this. So I got out my master Google and started searching, and I realized that that came from Bright Star, whatever
Right star.
steadfast as thou art by John Keats. So there's your inspiration for your title, I would say.
Well, yes. And if you read Keats's collected poetry, that Bright Star is the last poem in that compilation, and Awake Forever is the third from last line in
Mhm.
Bright Star. And when I hit that, I wrote down Awake Forever and started this book.
Yeah.
And slowly I realized the whole line was there um, to guide me, and and that's a gorgeous poem, and it's untitled, right? Bright Star is just the opening line. Oop,
Yeah.
okay. Oh,
And there's your cover.
yeah. There's my cover. Did you do that?
Yes, I did that.
Oh, okay. I was saying because I didn't. I got afraid. And it just worked, and Keats has so many gorgeous lines. He's and of course, he's in his early 20s and he's facing his death. Um, and
What I'm curious about your cover.
yes,
Tell me about this cover
a
because
little bit.
it's
It's the
interesting.
Tracy the Room, the person who's the publisher and of Walton Well, which is a well in Oxford, where people could be coming through the town and stop and get their water. Um, so a lot of people used Walton Well. Um, when she read this book, she called me immediately and just said, "This is a beautiful book. It's the best thing I've ever read." A number of people said it to me. That's kind of remarkable. I mean, in your heart and your ego, you're always hoping that you'll write a great book, which I think I did, and I've written a lot of them. I've published 19 other books, 14 of them novels. Um, so she worked with this title, and she discovered and that Beatrice is not only the guide in Dante Beatrice, but Dante Alighieri, the painter. Um, he's had a wife named Beatrice, and Teresa's a scholar, a tremendous scholar, a great Shakespeare scholar. So she discovered that picture that's on there, the young woman, which is it's a painting of um, Dante Alighieri's wife, who he loved very much and died young. Um, and then the designer, a person, because she's non-binary, Ash Goodwin. I'm misusing my pronouns, they, I should say, because my daughter's non-binary, and I always screw up.
It's okay. It's a learning curve we all have to deal with.
Yeah, it's, we've been stuck in our ways for a long time.
Hmm.
So she is a really amazing designer, and she got that picture of that girl walking in Venice, where this book, at least its narrative present, is set, right in Venice Beach, California. And they made that cover. Um, and so for multiple inspirations. Um, and I was sure happy with that cover.
Yeah,
It's a gorgeous cover.
it
And
really is.
yeah, I've worked with an artist, a Chicano, once muralist and performance artist named Gronk Nicandro out here in Los Angeles, who's now he's getting pretty kind of famous. And he joined our collective and started doing the covers for those books. So I started learning about good covers because he has some gorgeous covers. But this is he's I guess more towards abstract and expressionism in his work. Um, and so this is a kind of literal cover. How often do you see a cover which actually expresses the story inside it?
Exactly.
And this
Mhm.
does.
Yes,
This does. So it's a gorgeous choice. And we just spend so many times, anytime, you write, you doubt yourself and you fall away and you despair of your own incapacities and the I don't know the possibilities that the world will ignore you.
right.
And that's okay. It doesn't stop. It doesn't stop you if you're a writer, right? As I've said to many people who've worked with me and they've finished a book and they want to have it published and it's not being published and they said, "What should I do?" I said, "Well, you should write another book." That's what you do. Are you
Exactly.
a writer or are you not? A writer writes. So, but yeah, right. So, but the title is the title, which John Keats iterated in Bright Star, the gorgeous poem. There's so many poems that are gorgeous, and then came the cover. Some sympathetic, intelligent people created the cover to match the book, and Ashgood is a tremendous designer. She lives in Portland. She did go to. She was a student of mine here in Los Angeles briefly, and she herself is a really good poet. So there's a lot of imagination and inspiration involved in this, and it really clicked. And things have really, I when I what I thought when I had finished this book, and I hadn't really because there were many changes I had to make and adjustment is into the episodes of because she's traveling somehow from the 21st century, post-pandemic 21st century, to the early 19th century. And there's technically right two trips back to Keats, right? Two trips back to Shelley, sometimes Mary Godwin Shelley, right? She was the daughter of William Godwin and Mary Wollstonecraft, which is pretty amazing too. There were some pretty influential people for that time. And Godwin was a radical thinker, didn't believe in marriage, but married twice. Um, so I put down my pencil because I wrote the book with a pencil and a notebook. It covered two notebooks. I thought it was a pretty long book, but when I typed it up, it was only like 140 pages. And then when it went to print, it's 89. I said, that's 89 pages. That's all I did. And some people have asked me, well, how did you get all that stuff into 89 pages? I said, well, it didn't get it into it. That's that's what came out. Yeah, and it moves very quickly. Right? It moves very quickly for a book about three poets and right one young fiction writer. It moves pretty fast. It
Yeah.
moves.
As one who appreciates books that are more concise,
Yeah.
That's one of the appeals in a way. I'm a novella lover and short story lover,
Yeah.
and because I like things that are really in a tight piece. So this is just that kind of book for me. Um, so what is your plan now with the book? Where are you going with it? Have you set up
Well,
some
I've never promoted a book before, even though I've been writing for decades, right?
amazing with all
I,
the books you've
I just
written?
publish, get the book, hope it gets published, shrug and move on to the next book. So this is the first time I've promoted a book and hooked in with a manager and publicist at
Mhm.
Coriolis, and N- Nanda Daisu, who also just loved the book. Um, so this is again the first time in my life I'm spending my time trying to move this book and not really writing a book. Although I've started two novels since, but I didn't like either of them. Um, but that's okay,
Yeah.
I've published 20 books. I can
Say nothing
I
ventured,
can
nothing
live with
gained,
that.
right?
So uh, so that's kind of what I'm doing now is trying to take care of this book and promote this book because it's worth reading for
Well,
anyone.
you say
It's
you believe
truly
in it, and so other people will believe in it too. And the other thing is that once people read this book, they're gonna be your fans, and they're gonna want to read your other books.
right.
They're gonna be looking back at your list to see, which ones they want to select from that. So it will have a snowball effect, I'm sure. Um, but in the meantime, you're writing another book.
Right.
Something's always
All
cooking.
right. I guess the impulse is to kind of write a similar book. And then really, I haven't done that. I always write a very different book.
Mhm.
Um, but this
Well,
was very satisfying. Anyway, the end of that one story, when I thought I wrote that last word of the book, I uh, I closed the notebook and said, "Yep, yep, this is good." But yeah, the kind of by the end when things are happening and when the Frankenstein monster is driving the bulldozer to bury the library, which is basically his life, right? He's burying the people that created him, and of course that fails. He does bury the library, but he doesn't end his life, and that work stuff had to be kind of be moved around, particularly say Shelley's cremation, which occurred originally more chronologically, and then it became kind of part of the ending of this book. And I don't know. It's very moving. I read Friday night at Beyond Baroque, in fact, where the book is set in Los Angeles, and people we wept. I don't think I've ever had that happen to me
um,
with that kind of movement. And I ended with the scene in Brighton Beach after Keats loses the fist fight, and Mary, who's been protected unbeknownst to her by the Frankenstein monster in a brawl, then goes to Keats, and then they have this time their farewell, and he takes her to a garden, and he speaks about Fanny Brown as which he sometimes in his delusionary state, right, sometimes confuses Beatrice with Fanny, and the nightingale sings. I end the reading. That's not where the book ends. But so, and I don't know. It's that's a satisfying thing to find people moved by just hearing what what's in front of them. So that's fun.
mhm.
That's a fun thing, and it's fun to get some attention, right? I guess that's what we, you know, all want. That's what all my animals have always wanted, be it a horse or cat or dog or a rat or newt. Um, but it's nice
Yeah.
to have that. But it's interesting, huh? Because you spend time doubting yourself and wondering about promoting yourself and thinking, "Oh, isn't
Mhm.
this kind of an egotistical thing to do? So that's not, no, so it's not necessarily part of my instinct. And so that I find a little bit difficult, right? I don't know what say major entertainers. I don't know what
Yeah.
John Lennon
I,
or Swift or
yeah.
whatever what they go through mentally, but it's that so that
Well,
just
as writers, we often tend to be kind of introverted,
yeah.
and but we do like to hear some feedback. And I use when my in my writing, I write mostly poetry, but I do write some other things. It's I have to get deep into my emotion. If I can make myself cry in the process of writing something, then I feel like I've got something there because it goes in real deep for me to cry over something.
Right, and
And
laugh, right?
or to laugh.
When you
And if
can
I
read
laugh
your
out
when you order,
loud,
yes, huh,
then it's
yeah,
something's there, and
yeah,
I have a friend that writes a lot of humorous things, and she said, "Well, can you read this and tell me what you think?" And I'll just start laughing so loud, and she says, "I think I know what you think of it," and you know, that's the truth, if it pulls that out of you, because I don't boisterously laugh loud normally, and I don't cry easily. So if those things come out of me, there's something there. And this, as you know, as having been a publisher, before, when you're reading a manuscript, if it pulls those things out of you, then you start connecting to that work. The likelihood of accepting that manuscript goes way up, because if it's affecting you that way, then it's going to affect the people that might be the potential readers of that. But it's important to get your work out there. It's important to let people know you have it so more people can enjoy the experience that you're showing them in this book. And that's the way I look at it as far as the publicity and all of that. I'm shy. About promoting my own stuff. I'm not so shy about promoting other people's stuff because I can separate that out. But yeah,
mm,
it's that connection, that emotional connection is there. And but it's nothing wrong with getting it out there and getting it in other people's hands. This book needs to be read by a lot of people. And they need to experience what you've gone through in that process. So you're giving a gift to people for them to have the opportunity to purchase and read your book. And I hope that it just goes, that it reaches a lot of people so that
right,
they
yeah.
can have that opportunity to feel those feelings too. So I wish you great success with this.
Well, thank you, and I hope for it too. That's um, and I feel good about talking about it. I feel good about being here with you. Thank you to talk about it. Uh, so it,
So what's next after this?
I don't know. Again, I tried to write about my early life before the age of 12, but I kept going back to my family, and I covered a lot of that in my first three published novels, the Loop Trilogy. So I just said, no, I'm not going anywhere new here. Um, and I started researching Yeats, and I was thinking about Yeats and Maud Gonne, but I quickly discovered that Maud Gonne was an anti-Semitic, and I'm a Rosenthal, so I don't know about. I couldn't do it. I
Right.
couldn't. I couldn't bring her to the page. Not
Right.
now, not in this time, and not so.
Mhm.
So I walked away from that, and I began reading George Sand. Now, I have read all of Flaubert. I thought that was
Mhm.
interesting. And then she spent her last 8 years with Flaubert in the haunt, right, her home. And so I read his biography, and then of course she slept with Chopin for 9 years before that. So I read his biography and got all his music, and I really need, I suppose, to listen to more Liszt, who was a major pianist during that time. So, and Sand published 80 novels. So I've been reading her, and I'm trying to put together something besides, right, sleeping with those two major men and loving them, not just say sleeping. She had many other right lovers, and she cross-dressed, and she's a fascinating person. But I haven't felt a story come together yet. So I'm just
Sounds fascinating, though, what you told
oh,
me about her.
right, yeah,
Yeah.
right, no, right. So I keep reading and see what's happened. I'm reading a play she wrote. She did, I think, 25 plays, and this was the only play that didn't get made. And there's a book, I'm forgetting the Italian writer in the 16th century, in 1516, Orlando Furioso, and it's a long, long epic poem. It's not, it's really interesting. But she, in this book, in which a 17-year-old man finds out his life has been hidden from him in order to protect family inheritance, and he's really a woman. And at 17, he finds out he's a woman. Well, hmm, there's connections there, right, to Virginia Woolf, who wrote a novel, Orlando, who the same thing, changes from a man to a woman. And Sand, in this play, all her characters are taken name-wise from Orlando Furioso, this poem which was written in the 16th century. So, well, and there's a lot of strong women dressing as knights and fighting. I mean, there are plenty of damsels in distress as well. But so all those connections are fascinating. So, but I don't know what I'm going to do with them. Um,
Yeah, it's fascinating me with these awarenesses that I was not aware of, and at least for the most part. And I'm thinking, wow, how would that compare that life compared to 2024
right.
to this, century, and how would that apply today? Today, I wonder if any of that would be considered unusual because
Yet, right.
we're in a different society now, even though, we have people that refuse to move forward. We have a different society now, and those lifestyles would be like, yeah, that's my neighbor, and that's my sister, it's just, it's different now. Um, wow, that's
Yeah.
very
I,
fascinating.
yeah, I found, I mean, I taught at a Jesuit university for, I don't know, 35 years. I don't know how. And in the classroom, they're more frustrating things because of the whole video game culture and that understanding of narrative. But this is a Catholic university, um, which I am not a Catholic, but the kids accept each other. They don't care if you're, red, black, uh, yellow. They don't care how you dress, how you want to present yourself. If you people they're okay with transgender, they were all okay with that. So that level of tolerance is pretty amazing. When many of those things are unheard of uh, in our day, I would say, right? Um, I,
Today's generation is
yeah,
is just going to continue to surprise us with wonderful things
yeah.
because so many things that, I'm 70 years old, and the things that I was brought up with and understood, and things that were considered risque and unusual, or
Or
I was
forbidden.
in the 70s, so
Yes, right.
we
Yeah,
still have that corner of the market. But you know still, I'm still a 70s kid. But anyway, um we we had just a whole different generation. I can't wait to see what happens with the youth that are coming up these days. Because it's a whole new world. It's a whole new world. And
yeah,
yet
yeah.
you still have some of the old world there too. The good
Uh,
stuff.
Right. Well, and many of them, when they're worried about their lives and how they're planning,
Of course, it's
whether
devastating.
whether the world is going to end. But of course,
Hmm.
we thought about that too with the whole nuclear issue. We lived with people hovering over the button. So but their their politics they're off active. They're active and they're
Hmm.
political and the tough things that are going on right now. Uh, so the issue of being not anti-Israeli but anti-Zionist, but also not not liking Hamas and yet being against the destruction, right, of Gaza. And there's a lot of deep deep politics out there and important
Yeah,
stuff.
very much so.
So if you were right, so I don't know. I was in the street. I put the flag at half mast and did some contacts. Um, I was a protester and was politically conscious and I spent time at the first Earth Day. Was that
Mhm.
1970? I think it was. I think
Yeah, yeah.
uh,
Goes
that was
back a long ways, yeah.
yeah. But right. And there are portions. Some of us were more active than others, and that's the case now. Um, again, my daughter was very politically active for the
Hmm.
indigenous people in Australia and obviously for LGBTQ plus people. Um, and good.
It is good. It is
That's good.
good. It's a
Uh,
good thing.
right.
So,
So, but again, times are very different, and the music is different, and the sexual values are different, and uh, but I don't see anything bad going on out there.
mm-mm.
I'm for them, and one of the I know that Michael Ventura, who is a pretty famous journalist out here, um, and a founder of a magazine called LA Weekly, which was a pretty and still writing. I think he's 79 years old and still writing essays for the newspaper in Lubbock, Texas, although he lives out here. Um, but he's he's one of the people. He read the first early draft of this book and called me on the phone and said, "This is the best book I've ever read."
Um,
And
that's wonderful.
that's a really sweet thing to say because, of course,
Yes.
there's a lot of work out there, and some of it's really, really, really good.
Well,
So,
you're clearly very modest, and I'm grateful that people are seeing that value in this book with you.
right. And it
Yeah.
steps away. I mean, it's not a political book per se, although
Hmm.
Mary Shelley was political and Shelley was sharp and Godwin
And
were
it's
very
okay if it involves politics because that's part of life.
right, right. As
Mhm.
Aristotle says, you have two people. It's political now.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
uh,
Chuck, it's been great talking with you today.
oh,
Your book is gonna be on Amazon, and I'm
it is on
sure
Amazon and other some independent.
Independence.
And I'm supposed to. I didn't bring. Oh, you showed the copy of my book. Thank you. I'm
I
supposed to.
did.
Yes, thank you. That you can reach me at chuckrosenthal.com. That's my
Mhm.
website. You can
Okay.
see my other books there. You can
Beautiful site.
and you can communicate with me there if you want.
Okay.
I'm open to that. I spent 35 years or more in the classroom. I'm I can talk to you about about literature and about writing, and even your I don't know, your own writing. I read a lot of stuff, and I read a lot of other people's stuff, and it's so that's good.
It's
That's good,
good.
and I'm glad you had me here.
I'm
So
glad to have you here as well. And I'll be sure to put your information in the show notes so people will, your full bio and your website and that so that people will know how to reach you and get to know you a little bit more. But Chuck, it's been great having you here today, and
hey, Lisa, thank you very much. It's good
I
to be.
hope you have a great rest of your day.
Me too. I've got another interview at 5 o'clock tonight, so
But it won't be as good as this one. No, I'm
It
kidding.
won't be.
I'm kidding. I hope it's
Well, I
wonderful.
actually, yeah.
Thank you.